Manish Mehta, who writes for the Daily News, covers the Jets, NFL reporter, wrote this. The prevailing sentiment in Gang Green's locker room is clear. Players don't respect Gase, who has rubbed them the wrong way with his inability to lead and lack of support. The mercurial head coach has also drew the ire of a litany of players during his tenure with the Dolphins. I was just thinking when the story broke, like the players aren't loving Gase in New York, that Gase is what people thought the worst case of Kyle Shanahan was gonna be. When the Niners hired Kyle and that thing was always out there, like, is Kyle difficult? And the answer has turned out no, at least not in the way that people were afraid that he would be, that he wouldn't be a good leader, that he wouldn't be able to relate to players, that he wouldn't be a teacher, that he wouldn't, he would overemphasize offense in the draft, or he would get married to guys. And I mean, say what you want about the Dante Pettis pick. He doesn't force Pettis on the field, right? Like, Gase is exactly in this alternate universe what people were afraid Kyle was going to be. And Kyle, I would say, is what people thought Gase was going to be.
I think the day and age of having someone, and listen, coaches, you've been around them. I've been around them at a higher level. And maybe it's like this in high school, but it's a little harder because they're also like PE teachers sometimes, or have a normal person job. To me, once you get to the level of elite college coach or an NFL coach, you're making so much money. You're kind of in this own little world. So you can kind of be who you want to be, which is who you are. Because I'm going to be who I am. Adam Gase is a big time weirdo. And it just kind of hit me. The Tom Sula thing was a disaster. Adam Gase would have got longer than a year if they had signed Jim Tom Sula. Maybe it might have been 2 or 3, right? Just because he is offensively, like, he's not an idiot. He was kind of Kyle Shanahan.
You're saying if Gase had been Tom Sula's offensive coordinator,
there's a chance he might have got 4, right? Because even look at Miami, it got so weird so fast, but they had won. That first year they had made the playoffs. In a weird way, the Niners got lucky because how do you say it? Manish
Mehta.
Manish,
I believe.
I follow him on Twitter. Follows me on Twitter. Sometimes the stuff, it feels like it's a little anti-Gase. In fairness, I do, because some people think that he kind of like goes over the top, like he's that guy in that market. But you would say that it has followed Gase around now a little bit. Like, he's battled this in Miami. He's definitely battling it there now with like some famous players. Remember last year, Kelechi said something. They had a wide receiver that claimed he did something weird when they put him on injured reserve. Now Jamal Adams, who hasn't said this publicly, but this guy I think is just a dead man walking, unless, and this is what, like, you can overcome weirdness as a human, is being a great coach. And that's where the Niners are lucky. It's like, wait, you just get a good coach who everyone likes? Like, that's ideal. And again, you don't need everyone to like him, right? And I would imagine you ask Matt Breida, you'd get some different opinions. Not that they don't like Kyle, but not everyone's in his good graces, right? Breida got in his doghouse. Dante Pettis got in his doghouse. Now, rightfully so. But it's different players. Like, yeah, if you ask Deebo Samuel what it's like to play for him, he'll say good things, which he should. I always lean to the good players. Like, I don't give a shit what Dante Pettis thinks. But, like, not everyone has a raving review, I'm sure, of Andy Reid, even though that I'd say he definitely feels like that. Like, Marcus Peters, like, screw Veach, screw John Dorsey, Andy's my dog, second father. Like, that's just, somehow he pulls that off. I don't know if Kyle will always be able to pull that off, because Andy legitimately elite human. And I think Kyle seems like a pretty good guy. Adam Gase, I don't know if he's like a bad guy or anything. I just think he's clearly really weird, man. When you're really weird and you lose, it doesn't go well.
So 2 things. One, I think most players, right, don't just hate guys who don't play them and love guys who play them. I think most players get, right, like, just because you don't play me doesn't mean you can't coach me, or doesn't mean you hate me, or doesn't mean I should hate you necessarily.
But I think sometimes it's like we're not seeing eye to eye.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, you're telling me to do this, and I think I do it, and you say I still don't play. Sometimes it's like any personal relationship. It's not always black and white.
But I guess what I'm saying is the good coaches probably make it really clear to the players what it is they ask of them and why it is that they're not playing.
Well, wouldn't you say the number one thing in any relationship, whether we're trying to get something accomplished, whether you're trying to get something accomplished with a significant other, whether you're trying to get something accomplished with a player coach, whatever, communication, and you hear it all the time, and then when you don't do it, you realize, God, I should have just said something. I shouldn't have assumed that. I should have. And I think you see a lot of these stories of, you read this a lot in the pros, like, yeah, the coach was a bad communicator. Well, sometimes like they're afraid of confrontation.
Yeah.
Like I think when you're secure, like Andy's not afraid of telling someone, no, that's not good enough, you're not going to play. I think some coaches, it's like some humans, like you get into a fight with your wife, you got to kind of beat around the bush, where if you just said it in the right tone or whatever, you could get the problem fixed faster. And I think a lot of coaches, especially younger coaches, and this was always the knock on younger coaches, is it's hard to tell like a 4-time All-Pro something that is going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Where Belichick, when's the last time Belichick even thought like this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation? Maybe with Tom a little bit. But for the most part, I would say minus Brady, he hasn't had an uncomfortable conversation on his end in 2 decades, right?
Right.
And uncomfortable, like, no, I guess some humans, like Howie Roseman didn't mind confrontation. I don't love it. You know, I don't know where, like, I don't love confrontation. Because it is confrontation when you're telling a guy he's not going to play. And I do think Kyle, because he's maybe more of a normal human, it's easier to have that conversation. When a guy's telling you something you don't want to hear, which is never easy, and you think the guy's a weirdo, it's not going to go well. And I think that's kind of what's happening with this guy, that everywhere you read, people just think he's just kind of this just out there human being.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think part of this, tell me what you think of this.
Who's not winning.
The thing with Kyle was, when people said Kyle's difficult, there wasn't like a quote, there wasn't like a story. I didn't really know where it came from. The reputation that we thought he had, we didn't really know exactly where specifically it came from. And
the Redskins.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe it was just Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder. And you kind of mentioned that the other day, so maybe it is that simple.
Well, doesn't it feel like that's the majority now looking back? Like it just felt like that kind of that cloud hung over him and his dad?
We knew before Adam Gase became a head coach where the positive rep for him came from. Basically, if Adam Gase had a resume, there would be one reference on it. And you'd be like, one reference? That's not enough. And then you'd look and you go, oh, the reference is Peyton Manning? Okay, that's enough. Well, but this goes back to just people are different. 99.9% of the players you coach are not Peyton Manning. In fact, none of them are Peyton Manning except for Peyton Manning. So I could say, John, I'm looking for a John retires from broadcasting, and I'm looking for a job because I got to make some money. And John, you call up somebody and go, hey, I got a co-host for you. Get Guy. He'll be great for you. Well, maybe I was great with you. That doesn't mean I'll be great for that person. Guy, who else have you worked with? Nobody, just John. Well, okay. Well, hopefully what you did with John works with all these other people. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. For Gase, maybe the thing that worked for Peyton Manning only worked for Peyton Manning because he's Peyton Manning. But what Peyton Manning needs is going to be different than what most other people need. And I think that being his recommendation created this whole thing where it's like, well, if he's good enough for Peyton, he's good enough for anybody else, right?
I also think it speaks to the power of a recommendation, because my recommendation, if I call up someone at Fox, is only going to go so far. If you had worked a game with Troy Aikman or Kirk Herbstreit and they were saying, I've been doing this a while, he's the best play-by-play guy I've ever worked with, or vice versa, or like an executive was like, we had Guy do a game, this is Dick Ebersol, I'm telling you, right? It's just
right.
Boom. Let's say what you want. When Peyton Manning picks up the phone, in our lifetime, maybe Tom, but I'd even say Peyton's viewed a little differently. Like, I don't think it gets any better. Honestly, like, do you think a player could pick up a phone in any sport in our 35 years of life and give the explanation that he would give to? Because I think like MJ would be short. I just think Peyton would like just go on and on. You'd be like, holy shit. Because all these people that are in the hiring positions think like, well, if I ran a Fortune 500 company, what's always been said? Well, if Peyton didn't play football, he'd be fucking the CEO. And it's probably true. So when he gives you that recommendation, of all the recommendations you could possibly have, Adam Gase had one of the greatest recommendations in the history of the league, right? And that's kind of put him in the situation where if I'm just trying to think of like random coaches. If let's say Robert Saleh had gotten the equivalent of like, Brian Urlacher, that's not even, it doesn't even parallel, It's just like there's not, it doesn't get any better than that. Of course he was going to land. Like, yeah, the Niners, whatever, Elway was, you know what? Was Elway kind of right? Because it kind of feels like Elway was like, guys, this guy's a little weird, man. I think Elway was telling people that. Like, I'm at more of a different view on this. Peyton's in the bunker with him. I'm telling you, I see all the different coaches. I see it all. I've been around this for a while. I've ran other companies. This is weird.
Being Peyton's right-hand guy, right, is different than being a leader of a full locker room. Here's the other thing. If Kyle
because Peyton does a lot of that work for you, right?
Peyton runs the practice.
Who is Kyle's huge recommendation?
Well, this is what I was going to say. It'd be Raheem Mostert, Matt Breda. It'd be any running back that's ever played for him. It'd be the offensive lineman. It'd be some receiver who on another team would have 15 catches, but with Kyle he had 32, right? It'd be Kittle and Garoppolo and whatever. But I think his recommendations would be these guys who just, on most teams, might not make an impact. But for Kyle, he finds a way to get something out of them. Or, like, to me, it'd be his running backs. It'd be any running back that played for him and had a career year.
He always had, like, underrated people kind of beating the drum for him, right?
That's right.
But at the end of the day, if I'm an owner or I'm a GM, like, yeah, I'll find those guys too.
But that's the job is coaching. 80% of your roster is that guy.
Yeah, well, Kyle, think about Kyle now. He's lap Gase because, I mean, Peyton, no one's listening to me anymore on this one. Think of, like, who would you call immediately? I don't know. Richard Sherman, Joe Staley? Like,
yeah, now his recommendation list would be long.
They've changed.
John
Belichick?
Lynch.
Well, think about this. Like, who did Belichick call? What's the story? He thought very highly of Kyle. Like, that was the reason he got his quarterback. I would say Kyle's rep, Gase was way ahead. If this was a race, it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
Way ahead. I'd say Kyle's lapped him now. And partly because eventually when the recommendation, whether it comes from Dick Ebersol or Warren Buffett or Peyton Manning, if that recommendation never changes, but that guy's information and his resume, the position he's been put in because of that recommendation starts growing and we get more information, I think it kind of falls on deaf ears. And that's the one thing. Like, Kyle's not even no one's asking to get recommendations. People are going out of their way. Like, Sherman's like, geez, this guy is just the real deal. And then you get Belichick. It's like, yeah, I didn't want to send him to some shitty coach. I love Jimmy. Just as he's texting Jimmy, it's just it shows sometimes organically. When I was in Philly in the Fresno State, like, I helped weed out a process, but it really is difficult. Like, if we wanted to hire some intern and we got a guy that had, like, worked on Coward Show and we were, like, going to make him our main video guy for Haberman MIDDLEKAUFF. And I called, we got Colin on a conference call with you and me. And he was like, I'm telling you, every time I've been around this kid, he's always brought something to the table. He's been really impressed. We've been working in this business for 25 years. This guy's young, hungry. I would, if we had a spot, I'd hire him in a heartbeat.
Right.
What were we going to say? Like, not take that seriously?
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean the kid, like,
no one else would have a chance
based on his position.
I did get a DM on Instagram from Jack who said, I will literally do anything to work for free. I will watch your paint dry if that's what it gets to get the opportunity. He wants to intern with us, but
I get a lot of those. I mean, I think we definitely could eventually. I mean, unless right now, probably not at the point where we need.
I just want to sign up. I just want to sign a letter that, like, 3 college credits for his work with Ham. That's what I aspire to.
I'd go to bat for this guy. I'm telling you, Billy is the next star in the
To
biz.
the mat.